Again, thank you. I want to talk probably my whole time, but I'm going to try to get to other things. If I don't, I'll be here as long as you want to ask me questions. But I want to talk about health care. I want to begin by talking about Medicare and by talking about the problem, which I'm sure folks in this room are aware of. The only folks that are getting really squeezed in this deal are doctors. Part A, of course, is hospitals. Hospitals' pie is shrinking a bit. Why? Because you're moving things to outpatient care, and so the amount of money that is in hospitals in Part A is more because you're picking up the tab in outpatient care, and so they wind up in a lot better shape than you do. On Part D, when you get over to the pharmaceuticals, they got the sweetest deal in the world. Part A and Part B have somebody else set the amount of the reimbursement, not these guys. Pharmaceuticals get cost plus. They get to set what this is all about. On Part B, that's you're getting crowded because a whole bunch more services all of a sudden, particularly in the last 6 or 7 years, has been moved into Part B, and so the amount of money that each doctor gets for service is shrinking, and that is essentially what's happening. You tried to correct that this week with 1776, and you had folks, Republicans and Democrats, that voted against that. What I think we should do is look at solutions, and one of the solutions that I think we ought to look at is correcting the D part. Think about this. The health care bill that came out of the Baucus Committee is a sellout to the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm going to tell you why. Because it bans volume discounts for pharmaceuticals. I'll tell you how much money that is. That's $389 billion a year. The amount that would have been saved from the volume discount is $184 billion a year. That's not the $250 billion that Part B is in the hole, but it's a hell of a start to try to put that and move that into that part. Why is it that we couldn't get volume discounts? You know, the way Walmart thinks and folks like that in Part B of Medicare, I suspect it has to do with money. Money goes to members of Congress, money goes to folks in Capitol Hill, things like that. There's just more money over there than it is by messing with these poor old docs and stuff. But one of the things that we need to do is move that back into Part B. And that's a step toward moving that. The next thing that we need to do in this process is we need to make the insurance industry competitive again. It is the most anti-competitive industry since we deregulated airlines and since we deregulated trucking. But like airlines and like trucking, it's not that much difference. You have big insurance companies that break up into 50 states, and they break up into 50 states and operate as nonprofits. One insurance company has 40% or more of the business in 24 states. And how do they get that? Because of barriers to entry. You think you and I could get together $1 billion and make an insurance company and compete with some of these folks? No. We don't have enough lawyers right now. It would take a lot of them in order to get into that competitive situation. Can you go across state lines? Can your patients go across state lines and buy insurance? No, because you're too stupid. You may get somebody that's not good. You can maybe do it on car insurance, and you can do it on other stuff, but you're just not qualified to go to North Dakota or New York or California or places like that to pick that out. As a matter of fact, your employer is not smart enough to figure that out. That's what Washington is telling us. There have been studies done by lots of foundations that show that instead of $14,500 a year that an average family pays for insurance, it should be sub $10,000 a year. But nobody wants to mess with the two folks that give a bunch of money, and that is insurance companies and that is pharmaceutical companies, because they've handed out a whole lot on Capitol Hill. I'm not running for the United States Senate to be the most popular person in Washington, D.C. I don't think anybody should be the most popular person in D.C., but I know on health care who's the most important fish in this game, and it is doctors. And until the Congress of the United States recognizes that, until the Democratic Party and the Republican Party recognizes that, health care will never be solved. Can you imagine if we had a little situation, let's go back 20 or 30 years, to where individuals would have to go get their reimbursements. Can you imagine the uproar if individuals would have to pay you a bill and then go get their reimbursement from the insurance companies? my God, there'd be such an uproar. If they had to go through what you have to go through in your offices every day, it would all be overturned by the next election, or there'd be a whole bunch of people sent out of Congress. And that's a pretty good indication of what's going to happen. What we have to be about is paying attention to the people who are most important in the healthcare system, and that is the people in this room. Thank you very much.
And we're down to the Williams brothers. Commissioner.
We're actually cousins. With my time, let me repair back to where I ended in the last segment, and that was about a personal experience. 15 years ago, I was found to have a sweat gland disorder, and I can remember sitting down with my wife and our 3 doctors at a table as we talked about the kind of treatment I was going to have. We talked about when it was going to start. We talked about what the recovery looked like. And because when we got to the point of the cosmetic surgery and it was so painful, I said, since I can't see the back of my head, I actually talked about when it was going to stop. And there's a lesson in there. And the lesson is this: the last thing that any of us want to do is to have a government bureaucrat or an insurance clerk sitting between me, you, and my doc. And in addition to that, you think about it, the last thing we want is for that government bureaucrat or that insurance clerk to tell us what treatment I can have, when it's going to begin, and surely not to tell us when it's going to stop. In Washington, they're talking about the public option. Public option is supposed to be designed so that you can, make the private system honest. But if you pass a public option, eventually it'll be the only option as it crowds out private activity. My friends, there are things that we can do simply rather than just simply saying no. And I share the positions of many of my colleagues here. One of the things we ought to make sure that in any health care bill, nothing is in there that's a provision that advances abortion. There's nothing in there that causes or eliminates the conscious objection. But there's more. We ought to do sort of as the Comptroller said. Why don't we go about the business and make sure that we equalize the tax and the regulatory treatment between an employer-sponsored insurance policy and that we're allowed to buy on our own, so that we as patients are encouraged to go out, obviously, and purchase our insurance that we control. Because the idea, quite frankly, and the goal of any healthcare reform ought to be about advancing affordability and portability, increasing quality, but recognizing that the way you get there is through choice and competition and innovation. Beyond sort of equalizing the tax treatment, as others have said, take the Texas experience and export it to Washington in terms of lawsuit abuse reform. Allow us to be able to purchase insurance across state lines. Encourage employers to be able to join together in purchasing pools.